In this episode,
the most common question we'll get from anybody is, what radio should I buy? And that question makes me want to start a shotgun because it's so dependent on what your use case is.
In an obtuse world, Mark and Jefe will combine military, law enforcement, and general FUD knowledge to keep you vertical. Welcome to the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast.
Hey everybody, what's going on? Thanks for swinging by. I sure do appreciate it. Welcome to another edition of the Live, Laugh, Larp podcast. I am your host, Mark, and we have our wonderful co-host, Jefe. What's going on, man?
Oh, still a Ireland survivor, so
that's good. You got all 10, 10, and 2, right?
Yeah, still 100% here.
That's good.
But as everyone here that has probably served or is still currently serving, especially in Ireland, you just leave a little bit of yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's nothing physical.
A little bit of your soul.
Yeah, a little bit of your soul out there. So.
Yep. I'm glad that you're back, safe and sound, and you didn't throw a disc wearing all that Miles gear.
Yeah, Miles for it's. I wish I could talk about it, but it's so top secret, man.
I know. So. If it's definitely not in Heartbreak Ridge or anything. No. So nope. But we really appreciate you guys swinging by and checking things out. We've got a really awesome guest this time, talking about something that probably necessarily isn't the most glamorous thing when it comes to the 2A community, but it is one of the three important aspects of the battlefield. Shoot, move in. Communicate, right? So we're going to be talking with a awesome guest about communications, especially in the civilian world, and how not to get in trouble with the FCC, I suppose.
I don't think we're going to go that far.
Oh, no?
I think we're going to still get in trouble with them. But
but before we get into that, we have the administrative part of the podcast. We first want to say a huge thank you to you guys, because you guys are making this happen. We just pulled our analytics from the Firearms Radio Network, and man, let me tell you, you guys are just listening to us in so many different places, and it really means a lot to us. Jefe put a challenge out there.
Oh yeah, I did. I completely forgot about that.
And he wants to see how many people
people on Spotify, because that's where I listen to everything. So you should too.
Yep. I'm an Apple guy, so I listen through Apple Podcasts, and then I also check in just to make sure that sound quality is pretty okay on Firearms Radio Network. You can also find us on YouTube. We do have a YouTube channel, so if you want to just pull that up on your computer while you're at work or whatever, that would be cool.
Video to come soon.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure that out. Right now I don't have the bandwidth, and I got to reach out to some friends that are doing this to make sure that we're not only making it look good, but also figuring out a way that we can record it so it doesn't look like we're in some type of adult film. Because of the casting couch.
The ambiance.
The ambiance it is. Ambiance. Yeah. Why is everything so sticky? But anyway, so there is that. We appreciate you guys checking us out. We also want to say a huge thank you to Atero Arms. They are our title sponsor, and we sure do appreciate Jesse. That mad lad over there is just doing some awesome stuff for
So this is the September 15th episode, I'm assuming.
That's correct,
right?
Yes.
So we've already talked about how wonderful they actually are making a J-frame adapter for your AKs.
Yeah.
So go check them out. They're brand new. They're kind of prototyping it right now. I don't know if it's out. It should hopefully be out or close to out by now. But they are making now a offset. So if you are looking for a very convenient way to securely mount an optic to this somewhat inferior AK platform, check out Altera Arms, the most reasonably priced and probably the best mounting solution you have right now. Because didn't a certain company just recall a bunch of theirs because it was...
Well, that was ammo.
No, not I'm talking about ammo. We talked about this last time. A certain company was making a certain mount that was causing a bunch of stovepipes.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. That's correct. That is correct. Yeah.
These ones don't cost stovepipes. So
nope, they won't.
If you have an AK and you want to put a red dot on it, and soon if you want to have an offset, like a 45-degree offset, Atera Arms is going to be your go-to.
And one of the other great things too is they're adapting a a mount for a 3x like micro prism, like the primary arms micro prism,
and
3x.
for your grandpa's J-frame, it's in the
That's
closet.
Correct. Yeah,
so
that's correct. Yeah,
if you want to ever have a J-frame 45-degree mounted off set of your AK, check out Otera Arms.
There we go. And last thing is, we've talked about it before. If you guys want to contribute to the podcast, just go ahead and send us a comment on the podcast or wherever you're listening to, and we'll read it on the air. We've got this one from the AK Viking. He says, "Love Neil. Dude probably low-key hates me, but he's a legit shooter and very down-to-earth, cool guy." So we all love Neil, the combat accountant. That was a great, fun podcast. And
yeah, we got to China really quick on that one.
Yeah,
it was like one layer before we were talking about China.
I know, right?
So.
In World War III. But
speaking of World War III,
we
have a wonderful guest on. We kind of alluded to it. If you are looking at three things you kind of need to look at, especially if you're looking at being in civilian preparedness world, is how to shoot and how to move, but more importantly, how to communicate.
Mm-hmm.
For anybody that has served or currently serving, the second the radios go down, you know that everyone hates their life and no one knows where anybody's at. So we have a wonderful guest today with Lindsay with LKD Communications. Lindsay, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Jefe, and thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you guys taking a little bit of time out of your day to chop it up about communications.
Cool. So who are you and what do you do?
So my name is Lindsay Doe. I am an instructor, primarily for Orion Training Group is who most of my classes are listed through, though I do private classes if that is something that you would be interested in. But I mean, I guess that's a little bit of an existential question to ask who I am. But primarily, I think in the context of this podcast, I'm a communications instructor. I was a communicator for the Army Guard, for 10 years. Did that, made my way up to a battalion level commo NCO, decided that the Army was not for me anymore, got out, and now I am currently an app developer / cybersecurity person on the civilian side, and a big ham radio enthusiast for my, I guess, TISM hobby, I guess I could say.
So, quick question for you. How much of a heartache was the ANCD to your daily life?
Brother, I think the ANCD was a heartache for anybody that ever had misfortune to touch or see one.
For those of you that don't know, the ANCD is a device that basically loads the frequency hop codes into your SINGAR radios.
Oh, SKLs? Is that what they're called?
I was about to say, brother, you're showing your age there.
I know.
They're called SKLs now. In the late 90s, they changed that.
No, they were still SINGARs when I was in. All right.
No, the what you're talking about is the SKL.
Oh, the SKL. Yeah. So, so you basically had this freaking donkey dick that you hook up to the ANCD and then plugged it into your plugger, and then you freaking load the frequencies in and
so for you GWatt lads, he's talking about an SKL.
It still wasn't. I was in GWatt. It wasn't a freaking SKL. It was the ANCD.
I don't know when it changed over. I'm a civil affairs guy. I deal with
yeah,
people.
Right. It was probably legit. It was probably like around 2010, I would imagine.
No, we have the expert here.
I'm about to say it phased out before I got in 2013. So
there you go.
Okay,
I knew what you were talking about, but SKL was pretty much the standard.
So basically, when you went to
2008,
yeah. So basically, when you went through AIT and you went walking through the Commo Museum, they're like, "And here's an ANCD from the late '90s and early 2000s." Listen, but this is how old I am. When I went through Bullock 2, I was the radio guy, and I carried a Prick 77. No, it wasn't. It wasn't.
E7?
It was summer camp. What do they call it? Freaking
LDAC.
LDAC. Yeah, I carried a Prick 77. That's how dated their commo equipment was, and we also had M60s as well.
When I went in 2011, we still had it. That was 2010. We still had M60s as well.
Oh, did you? Okay.
So, anyways, enough about us. Let's talk about you. How wonderful are we? So, were you? So, I'm assuming a 25 uniform. Is that what's?
Yeah.
Like, okay.
That is correct. The
Cool.
Signal System Support
Look at you.
Specialist. So that essentially means that I got half of like a 25 Bravo, which is like a computer specialist school, and then I got half of a like radio specialty school. But when I got to my line unit, I've spent the first 6 years of my career attached to an infantry unit, so I got to touch everything. Pretty much they were said, as long as it plugs into the wall, it's commo. I once had somebody come and ask me to look at their mini fridge. So it's very different once you get like from your initial schooling and they teach you like, okay, this is what you're going to look at. And then you go to your unit. I can't speak on all of the National Guards, but I know the National Guard that I served in, the equipment they were using was probably stuff that you might have used, Mark, because it was very old and outdated.
Yeah.
So, and also,
wait. Did you just call me old and outdated?
Not at all. Seasoned like a cast iron skillet. The eggs just slide right off.
There you go.
Thank you so much.
So, and also feel free. You don't have to mute your mic every time. We can
Gotcha. I got a deviated septum, so I don't want you guys just to hear me slightly wheezing in between every word. So.
It's okay. I gotta listen to him use every other word too.
Exactly.
So
there we go.
So 10 years as a 25 uniform. Decided wasn't for you. Was Signal your first choice? Was that kind of just gifted to you by the military?
It was a gift because Intel was my first choice. But my eyesight wasn't good enough. So they're like, okay, we either have Signal or Supply. And I was like, well, I grew up kind of like a computer nerd and all that stuff. So I was like, I like computers. So I was like, I guess I'll go try this. So I did it and kind of fell headfirst into ham through that because one of my mentors, he's a first sergeant now, was like the biggest ham guy, and he was like the super duper Cajun guy, and he would, I would be like, man, how do you know how to do all this stuff? He's like, man, you just gotta come by the hand club and come check all this stuff out. So that started my ham career, because a lot of veterans that I know, you get issued green brick, you make sure green brick stays alive, and then that's the extent of your communications journey, right? But for me, I wanted to be good at my job. So you can't learn that, 1 week in a month, 2 weeks in the summer. You have to seek outside knowledge for that. So that's just something, that's how I got into like really delving into ham radio and stuff like that.
So, and now you are working for one of the, I guess, I don't know how to describe it. You're working for a small unit tactics, firearms, law enforcement, military training organization. Was that always something that you wanted to start with? Were you like growing up into the gun culture and have guns around you, or is this kind of something forced upon you by the military?
So I'm from the deep South. So I'm from South Louisiana. So I've always had firearms around me at some point. Pretty much growing up my whole life, but I was really big into competition shooting. I say that, do not look me up on practice score. You'll be very disappointed. It is.
If you look up anybody, you're always disappointed on practice score.
I am a lover of competition shooting, but competition shooting is not a lover of me. Though I can give credit to our competition shooting instructor, Robert Epifania, who's a grandmaster who's just been pouring his advice and wisdom into me to make me better than a B-class shooter. But I really got into that over time, just really wanting to be good at everything. I don't like to half-ass anything. That's kind of like a character flaw of mine. So it's like, okay, I'm going to be in the military. Well, I'm going to be a really good shooter. I'm going to go, work out, and then I'm going to go learn how to be the best at my job. So for me, that was just a natural progression of like, how can I make myself an asset, to these people? Because, Hefe, I don't know what you said. You were civil affairs.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you come in as like this pogue that's attached to this infantry unit, and they have like zero respect for you, zero, expectations for you. And so all you have to do is just put your head down and grind. And I guess that was a natural progression. So Orion actually pushed out that they were looking for a comms instructor. I've been following all of the heavy hitters in the space, Mojave, Josh from Ham Radio Crash Course, all these big heavy hitters, just because it's something that I enjoy. And when I saw OTG push out something, I was like, you know what, that's me. I've been an instructor before. I was like, let me throw my hat in the ring, and I did. And then 2 years later, I'm still working for him, still teaching. So I think that means I haven't hurt anybody's feelings yet. So that's good.
Yeah. So you make a great point for anybody who's, again, thinking about serving. Yeah, it's really hard. I just actually, what's today's the 27th. So earlier, all of July, I was doing a JRTC rotation down in your home state of Louisiana. By the way, don't visit.
I was about to say, you should have hit me up. I live like 10 minutes away from the training sites. I could have brought you a pizza, dude.
Actually, so the fun secret that if you can get into civil affairs, your world, like CTC rotation, was a cakewalk. You show up, you make friends with the mayor. I had an AC room the entire time. We had computers. The Arnlandians, the Arnish, always brought us snacks and everything like that. So we had a pretty cush life. And then you watch all the infantry guys hauling stuff through our town. But you did bring up a great point. Anytime you, for those who are thinking about not exactly going to the infantry or the armor routes, but looking at or getting told they are commo, they are medics. The unfortunate thing is you have to be an infantry person plus your job. And that's really, really hard. Yep. Especially when if you are trying to be an expert in 2 or 3 fields all at once to be a useful asset. I don't know where I was going with that. But.
Well, and it branches off to other aspects too. Like, in the first 7 years of my military career, I was on tanks, right? So not only did I have to be, what's that?
Thanks for your service.
I see what you did there.
Mark, are you tall? Or are you?
No,
he's like 5'1".
I'm a freaking. My favorite GI Joe was Tunnel Rat because he was like 5'4".
He looks like Olaf from Frozen, about the same height.
Yes, motherfucker. Oh my god! But
so you were built. You were made to be a tanker.
Oh yeah. That was one of the really cool things about being short. Which, again, 5'7".
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
For anybody in
height.
So you're built to be a tanker too, Lindsay.
I know. I don't know, bro. My people are good in the tunnels too.
Yeah, see, I'll tell you. But as a tanker, we had to be multifaceted, right? So just like Lindsay, you had mentioned you've got to be a commo expert, but you also have to be kind of a grunt. For us, we had to be obviously proficient with the tank. We had to be mechanics because we didn't have mechanics always. We had to figure out how to fix our own stuff. And then we also had to figure out our own commo stuff too.
Look at this guy trying to defend the combat arms guys. Like,
I'm not
we had to
say
do
that. No. I'm
stuff
not saying that. I'm not saying that because I don't necessarily know how it breaks down for infantry units, how many commo guys are with each platoon or whatever. But we had one commo guy for the entire company.
That's normal. Yep.
Is it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. So when he's off with 3rd platoon, I've got to figure out how to get this freaking, once again, the ANCD hooked up and make sure that it's loading correctly. And then all of a sudden, when I was in Iraq, freaking, I'm the platoon commo guy because for some reason I can figure out how to load everybody's radio. But anyway, I digress.
So working for Orion Training Group for 2 years. Tell us how that's been.
Oh, I'm very, very blessed to work with men that are like the tip of the spear, like so kind too, which I think a lot of people take for granted, like working with genuinely good people. Because I'm sure, like a lot of people that you meet that are like, apex predator dudes that are just so good at the job. Generally tend to lack like in other areas like morals and stuff, but the guys that I work with are absolute rock stars when it comes to being a good human. So it's a lot of learning. I never did CQB besides like the initial, basic training bullshit. So going into Orion Training Group, what's good about them is they're teaching everybody. So as somebody, like me who is a constitutionalist, getting to work for a company that's like, hey, we don't care if you're a plumber, if you're a police officer, if you're an infantry guy, you guys can all come and attend the class. So I've just been hopping in as many classes as they'll let me show up to go do, and just trying to be a sponge and absorb all that knowledge from those guys. But it's been an absolute blast, and it's definitely made me elevate my game because they're such good instructors. You're learning and all this good information from them about how to be a better instructor. So I really am blessed. That's the only way I could say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's what's been so nice about, like, say what you want about, I know OTG's been kind of like and some like, but I don't say butt of jokes, but meme culture sometimes will get a hold of these companies. But it's really awesome to see that OTG is like one of those few companies that, again, as you said, if you are Joe the plumber, if you're an electrician, if you are a former 18 series, hey, come on, take a class with us, because there's a lot of instructors that still have that kind of ego about them. It's like, now I only teach LEO and military because I'm only want to teach, this to people that have a monopoly on the violence, a lot of the violence.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So what? And I don't want to delve too much into OTG. So what do you do for the commo side of OTG? What's that look like for you?
So mainly I list all of the communications classes. I teach all of them. So mainly right now I'm teaching 2 classes. I guess I'll leak it on you guys' podcast, but I do have plans to drop a couple other classes, maybe late this year, probably first quarter next year. I really want to do a TAC class for civilians, and that's going to be a big, I guess, shockwave to the industry, because TAC classes are few and far between at the moment, and they are very expensive. So right now I'm teaching an intro class, which is pretty much just like, hey, I have no idea how to spell radio. I want to learn the very basics of communications and, being able to actually use this $25 Baofeng that I bought off of Amazon. And then I have my squad communications class. My next one is coming up the 7th, which I think you said is after this is released, but that's okay.
Yes.
And then
before this is released, the classes before this is released.
Yeah. It's okay. I'm talking to you guys from the past.
It's cool.
I have my squad comms class, which is kind of like a bridge the gap between the technical and then the tactical. So it's covering a little bit about how to build your own comms plan. I do like, the questions about like, oh, hey, how do I do X, Y, and Z? How do I build a comms plan? What do I need to do? Things of that nature. But I really want to enable people to be able to make their own decisions when it comes to communications. I know it's a bad business model to not have people constantly dependent on you, but that's not what I want to do as an instructor. I want to build better communicators, give people a really good base, and then watch them grow in their communications journey. So that's what I do. I also work with their Promethean members club, which is really neat. If you're in South Louisiana or any of the states touching Louisiana, I would definitely check it out. And I teach for them, handle all their communications and stuff like that. So that's mainly my position over there. Yeah. I'm not the CQB instructor, don't worry.
I saw you guys acquired or merged with Promethean, was like 2 weeks ago.
It's Promethean is a members club that Orion's been offering for, I want to say a year, no, maybe even 2 years. It was like right after I got on. And you pay like a monthly fee, like a jiu-jitsu gym, and then you get training each month. So it's really cool. Sick. Yeah.
Wow. So you kind of hinted at it. So you hinted at the TAC. We'll get there in a second. So basic intro comms class. What for those who are planning on getting into some basic intro comms class and going through either OTG or LKD, what can they expect in that class? Like, give us like a quick overview of what you will need to what you will learn in it, I suppose.
So this class is tailored to like your day zero person when it comes to comms. Like, hey, I don't know anything about comms. I don't know where to start. And I mean, there's only so much you can teach in a 3-hour class. I wish that I could just mind dump telepath all of my knowledge into whoever needs it. But that's not the way the world works. So yet. Neuralink is getting close, dude.
I mean, they have like 3 or 4 people that have it right now, and like all they do is play video games. I don't know what the big deal is, but
I mean, they're on to something.
They are onto something.
So it's just pretty much it's a day zero class that goes over like the basics of like, hey, here's the law. If you care, here's things you can do if you want to follow the letter of the law. Here's things you can do if you don't give a hoot about the letter of the law. Basic things like how to set it up on your kit. Because I know, Mark Jefe, y'all come from a military background, but if all you know is just what you've seen on the movies, luckily now with social media being so prevalent, you can kind of pick up on what other people are doing with like how to set up stuff on your kit. It's good to have somebody there to like ask and be like, hey, why do you wear your push-to-talk on this side instead of this side? Why do you wear your radio here instead of there? Little things like that. And then I go over like the basics of like different flavors of radios, different radio brands, because that's the most common question I get. I know I've talked to Alex from Mojave in detail about this. The most common question we'll get from anybody is, what radio should I buy? And that question makes me want to start a shotgun because it's so dependent on what your use case is. And I like to go over like, hey, here's what all the different features are of the most common radios. What's important to you? You pick as an adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex, I hope.
So for our Kurt Cobain fans, what radio should we buy? No. Okay, so then you have...
It's a Bayo thing. It's a Bayo thing.
Yeah, why is it a Bayo thing?
Yeah, why is it boofling?
It's a Hello Kitty radio from Target.
There you go.
More bubble wrap, the better.
Yeah. 2 cups and a string is typically what I tell people.
Oh, okay. So what kind of cups are we like? Do you want like the red Solo cups? Is that works best, or is it the tin?
I actually find out that I get better sound quality from the insulation from a styrofoam cup, as weird as it sounds.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like you've tested this.
Yeah.
No, I'm fucking with you, Mark.
So, and then level 2 is how to take what you learned in level 1 and add it to your buddies, essentially.
Right. So it's a squad comms class. So it's like, okay, I know the basics of communications. How do I incorporate this on a squad level, a team level? And I use the term squad as kind of this overarching term that just means like a group of dudes, or whatever you identify as is 2024.
2024.
That could be your family. That could be, the people that you work with professionally or otherwise. So that's what squad comms is. This is just kind of like, okay, you've gotten a little bit spun up on the technical. Now let me teach you some TTPs, techniques, tactics, and procedures for those of us that weren't funny in high school and went to college.
It's the who joined the conservative welfare programs.
Right. So that is mainly what it's for. It's like, okay, so a little bit of technical. Here's how you actually implement it. Basic decision making, basic developed prefrontal cortex type stuff, and a lot of stuff that I feel like is missing from a lot of classes, because there are beaucoup, which means a lot, of radio classes that are tailored to the ham radio and things of that nature. But I feel like as far as like what's offered to civilians, there are not as many that are teaching like tactical stuff. So that's mainly what this class is for.
Okay. And then you announced it here first, so in the future you'll probably already be out. This happens to us all the time. We're going to announce it here, and then a week before it drops, it gets announced on the Instagram or something like that. But so you're talking about TAC radio. Is that like using SDRs to find out where the anti-homies are at, or what's?
So TAC stands for Team Awareness Kit or Tactical Assault Kit if you have the military version.
Yeah.
And it's a application that runs on your phone that allows you to share real-time data. So that application has the front end, which is what you interface or use, which is through like your end user device, aka a phone or a laptop running WinTAC. And then you have the back end that actually takes all of that data and disperses it amongst whoever is connected to your server, which is the TAC server. So I'm developing a class that's like, hey, here's how you build a server. And then I'm going to develop a class that is, hey, here's how you use the application. So
that would be a godsend, because I sat on a 14-hour bus ride trying to figure that out. And all I got was, I am too dumb for it. And they have what's the cloud one they have that you can sign up kind of for free. What's that website called? It's like you can set up your own TAC server, and it's on
iTAC.
Yeah, no, it's TAC, Argus TAC.
Yeah.
So I set up like one of those, and I played with it for an hour and realized I don't know what I'm doing. So I'll be your first customer for that TAC class.
I'll hold you to it.
There you go.
So, we have everywhere from your Baofeng to TAC is something that you're willing to teach. In this kind of modern world, everyone just says, "Hey, I got my Baofeng UV5R. I'm good, or I'm going to kill everybody because our artillery strikes are going to hit us." And we're also seeing a lot of, especially this year, like AT&T was down for like 2 days in a lot of places. A lot of cell phone companies are going down. What would you, if you could like just tell the masses one thing about communications, of what would you recommend to people to start looking at doing, and how would you, like, I guess, promote being self-sufficient in communications?
And why is it GMRS
or mesh networks?
So I'm going to give you a long answer for
what
ahead. Can be a short answer. But
perfect.
So the best way, I think, to start structuring your life around communications is very simple, and it's something that Mark and Jefe, you probably learned in the military. It's called a PACE plan. A PACE plan stands for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. And if you're extra special, you get to add an extra E for extra emergency. So I tell people, like, man, we've become so dependent on cell phones for everything. And the second that goes down, it's game over for so many people. That takes away your ability to make any sort of contact any sort of help. So the easiest thing to do is just figure out what's going to work for you. Hey, I want to pay the federal government $70 and get a GMRS license, and I'm going to call that good. And maybe I live in a place that has GMRS repeaters, and my little handheld can cover me, for 20 something plus odd miles, or however your repeaters, far your repeater is from you. So maybe that's not feasible because, your children don't understand how to use a radio yet. So maybe get something like a Garmin InReach that allows you to just text through it. Or if, hey, neither of those things really appeal to me, I want something that can create internet wherever I'm at. Maybe I spend $300 on the new Starlink, and then just have that in the pocket and not activate it, and then activate it whenever I need it. And then still be able to make Wi-Fi calling, access, the internet. So it's really dependent on what is good for you and your use case, right? If it's not sustainable, it's not attainable. And like so many things in life, if you cannot sustain one, like the upkeep of that item, the training of that item, it doesn't need to be a part of your pace plan. I've served with so many people where they put shit on the pace plan that does not work, and they think, by clicking their heels 3 times, that once we get out into the field, it will work. They'll will it to work, but that's not the way the world goes. You kind of have to look at communications with a pragmatic approach, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I structure my life. And, even though I am the commo person, like I use my cell phone every day. That's my primary means of communications. And then I have a radio in my vehicle and a handheld in my bag. Like, that is my communications plan. So for me, that's what makes sense in my life, For you or whoever's listening to this, if it makes sense for you to spend the money and get the Garmin InReach, or spend the money and get the, $800 sat phone, that might be, worth buying for you.
So you brought up a couple cool points I want to just touch on. So you talked about Garmin InReaches, you talked about Starlinks. Have you worked with mesh networking at all? Is that something that
you
talk about that? Yep.
So I've played with on the low end Meshtastic nodes, which are super duper neat. If you're listening to this and you've never heard of Meshtastic, I would definitely check out their website. Phenomenal documentation. I promise you, the documentation is so good, even if you are completely technologically illiterate. Okay, well, maybe not completely, but if you're very slow when it comes to technology, I promise you that this documentation will walk you through being able to set that up. So I really like, mesh networking and my little Meshtastic nodes when I go hiking, because I can pull open the app and send GPS data to my husband and send a text and be like, hey, I'm good, not dead yet. Don't cash in the life insurance check yet. So that's mainly what I use that stuff for. I have used the TAC plugin for it, and the throughput for it is not exceptional. So like the refresh rate and everything else like that, because of the low power and just the low throughput of those really small nodes, you're not going to be able to push overlays and live video data through them. So there is a give and a take, but unlike like an MPU5 that's like 10 grand from Wave Relay, it is something that most people can budget into their life as a $50 Meshtastic node.
Okay. So great answer. What is a mesh network? Because for those who
that's me. That's my question.
This guy to my right.
Okay. Mark, have you ever had a LAN party?
Yes. Oh my goodness. We were just talking about that earlier today in one of my ironically, in my day job, I had a meeting earlier today, and we were talking about LAN networks and Halo tournaments and stuff like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So imagine that you have this LAN party, right? Except it's all wireless. I know that may not make sense, but bear with me here. Mm-hmm. So essentially what a mesh network is like we're all holding hands. We can all see each other. And depending on what type of mesh network you have, it can be something that is self-healing, right? Meaning that, X amount of nodes can drop off and then we'll still have connectability. Or, if one node that is, at point A can't reach point C, but point B can reach point A, then point B will replicate the data from A to C. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's kind of like the transitive theorem. If A equals B, then B equals C, then A equals C, right?
Yeah. And I know my comm snobs are probably listening to that very oversimplified definition, or probably biting their thumb at me, but
yeah,
that's the easiest way that I can kind of break down what a mesh node is.
Yeah.
So you so Meshtastic is one of the kind of the primary civilian aspect, like pushes for. We also have like Gotenna is doing their own. Or they also is everyone using Meshtastic, or is there different? are we just kind of using like, hey, all mesh networks are mesh-tastics, but not all mesh-tastics are mesh networks?
No, so a lot of these companies like Gotenna, Silvusware, Wave Relay have their own language that the mesh network is like written on, if that makes sense to you. But Meshtastic is this open source software that allows you to be able to get off the shelf hardware, meaning the little node, flash the firmware onto it, meaning the program that's going to tell the hardware what to do, and then connect to it through an app on your phone through Bluetooth, and then send texts that are encrypted over radio, and be able to do that completely off grid. There are so many good YouTube channels breaking down how to build these like off-grid Meshtastic repeaters and stuff like that. It is a very popular entry-level mesh networking thing, and I think a lot of that comes to like kind of the spirit of anything open source. I don't know if you guys are big nerds, but I am a big Linux nerd, so I kind of find whenever you have something that's open source that people are working together to make better, it just becomes such a good product, and Meshtastic is that. I would highly recommend, if you have not watched any sort of videos or anything on that, there's a couple channels on YouTube. I think S2 Underground has a video. There's another guy that I'm blanking out on his name, but he's phenomenal.
The one I kind of got introduced was S2 Underground, and then it's the comms channel, I think is what it's called. And he does. That's it. He's been going in a lot into like Rockland's little handheld mesh units, and how to set up your own like mesh hub network. He has like even the solar charged with like base stations you can use and stuff like that. So that's been like kind of my big thing I've been trying to get into. So you said that though Meshtastic and TAC don't work too good together. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So the throughput, meaning if I were to take all of the data, right, and say it's like I'm trying to like push peanut butter through a straw, right? That's what it is, because you have all of this data that's trying to go through this node that's not capable of pushing that much data. So the refresh rate is really slow because it takes a long time for that data to be pushed out of that node and for the unit to receive it and translate that into the application. It's a phenomenal place if you want to get your feet wet into mesh networking. But there's I think there's Beartooth now. I've looked into a little bit of their stuff, but I haven't had any hands-on. They're making stuff that is TAC, has a TAC extension with it. And then Gotenna also has a TAC plugin, and then Wave Relay if you're balling like that, and Silvus. I got to play with Austin from Mojave Repeater came down, and I helped him set up a TAC server, and I got to play with his Silvusware Streamcasters. Dude, they're so nice. You can do we were sending like pictures of me grilling steak through them through TAC and stuff like that. Like it's pretty incredible, the data throughput difference. But you don't have to spend the $60,000 on the Silvusware suite. You can spend $50 and learn, and then figure out, hey, this isn't worth it. Maybe I want to spend, I don't know how much a Beartooth is. I think it's like around 8, maybe, or a Gotenna, which I think is around 13. I understand how this works. I appreciate the capabilities. I want more. And then you can use that to kind of have like a base knowledge before you go out and buy shit. Because I say this a lot in my classes, spending money on radios doesn't make you a smarter person. I wish it did. I would be a Mensa candidate by now if spending money on radios made me a smarter person. But it doesn't. So you need to have that base level of technological understanding and training in order to be a better communicator.
And I feel like that translates. We've on this show before we've talked everything from gun like EDC, gun holsters, and everyone believes that if I spend the most money, I'm the most bestest. But it seems and radio seems like something that you could dump a lot of money really quick to get something that you're not going to be happy with. I remember I was like, you know what, I'm going to go buy. I'm going to sell some stuff. I'm going to go buy my one radio. That's not a bit Baofeng. I'm going to buy this one radio and be set for life. And then I think I was looking at I was on Mojave's website and looking at some of them. Like, I don't know what I'm about to spend $500 on, so I don't think this is going to be the choice for me right now. But especially with like how much there is to know about radios, because it's not as simple as you buy a radio, you plug in channel, and talk to friends. There's things like digital, there's analog, there's trunked stuff.
And then you get into the different types of frequencies. Like I mentioned before, GMRS. You've got GMRS channels.
Those aren't real things.
You got what the is it called?
FRS.
FRS channels. You got ham radio frequencies where you actually have to plug in a frequency. You've got radios that monitor two different frequencies at once. How do you figure that out? Yeah. So over the last, I would say probably 6 months, I've been looking into the ham radio and GMRS side of things. And the more I get involved in it, the more I try to figure things out, the more lost I feel. I would say.
Sounds like you need to take a class.
It sounds like I need to take.
I do know somebody that could help you out with that.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it, and that's why we have you here.
So, you talked about. You said you're not like ST Underground, where he only talks probably on radios and the GhostNet. Are you part of GhostNet, by the way? Do you dabble with that?
I've hopped on a couple times.
Is it worth it?
I mean,
it's something.
It's up to you if it's worth it or not. Like if that is something that you want in your life, to be able to just take in information from independent sources.
So
I have YouTube though, so I don't keep my HF radio constantly running on JA Call just to listen to that GhostNet. So
GhostNet for those again for those who are lost in it, like Mark. GhostNet is essentially the best way I can describe it is like a CNN news channel for your for J Call, your radios. It just plays all day and people just talk about what's going on in their areas. Is that a good description of it, or is that a little bit more to it?
Yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Okay. So you said you always have a little handheld on you, and then you have one for your vehicle. What's the handheld you picked?
Okay. So I rotate out because I'm an instructor, and not because I have a radio addiction problem and I just want excuses to buy more radios. Unfortunately, I wish I had something unique to say, but I keep going back to the Yaesu VX-6. Like, I keep going back to it because it's just perfectly palm sized. The battery life lasts for fucking ever, and it's super duper durable. It can receive on 0 to 999.9. And if you get Mars modded radios, then you can access those frequencies. So I keep going back to that one. Like if I'm not actively testing something, that's the one where I'm like, okay.
So and then what is the vehicle setup look like?
It's an ICOM dual band. So it's just a HF or VHF, UHF. Like super duper cheap. I think it was like sub $300. And then I ran a antenna on a magnet mount because I wanted the capability to not look like absolute dweeb or suspicious. You know, if I go to a different city where they're like, what the hell is going on with that? I can just take that thing off and throw it on the inside of my vehicle. So
right on.
That's yeah.
So the different handhelds that I'm familiar with is obviously the one that you just discussed. I've heard about those. I don't think I've actually even seen one, but I've heard the name before. You also have like Wuxin or Ocean I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but that's another handheld kind of ham radio. And then obviously we've already mentioned it before, but we've got the Baofangs. There's a few different versions of it that seem to be fairly popular because they're incredibly cheap. If someone was to start out, and I know again you're probably going to
roll your eyes,
Kurt Cobain on us, but where
if you were to Kurt Cobain yourself, what would you use?
Loading one in the chamber as we speak.
I know.
Mossberg 500, Arrington. What are we working with?
I guess the biggest part, and I don't know if you've really kind of answered this. Where does someone start besides obviously taking one of your classes? Where do they start? Do they need to go buy one of those study manuals for the ham radio, or I don't know if you're familiar with NC Scout. He's got the Gorilla's Guide to the UV5R. Is that something worthwhile? I mean, what would be the first step?
What's the glide path?
So everybody learns differently, Mark. Some people are visual learners. Some people can learn, just by reading. Some people are audio learners. Some people have to have, a couple different forms of stimulation to be able to take in any sort of information. So that is going to really depend on hey, can you read something and retain it? Or has TikTok ruined your brain to where you cannot retain something through strictly reading?
That's a valid point.
Can you sit down and watch a YouTube video and retain that? There are phenomenal ham radio guys that are on YouTube that are constantly putting up phenomenal content. Ham Radio Crash Course, I will always shout him out. I don't even think he follows me on social. I don't think he knows who I am, but I absolutely love his content, and he seems like a kind-hearted man.
Yeah. He's done a collab with Not a Rubicon, and that seemed to be a lot of fun. I've been watching a lot of Not a Rubicon stuff because I just like his sarcasm. But yeah,
so there's a lot of different ways to start. I always say training before spending money on something. Learn about what you want to spend money on before you go and spend money on it. Otherwise, you may get something that you're like, hey, I have to pay X amount of dollars if I want to use this radio's capabilities to the full extent legally, So it's really about, I think, figuring out how you learn. Okay, I learned this way. Then figuring out, okay, what is the best version of that I can consume, whether that is YouTube or books or a class with myself or Mojave. Going out, taking that education. Dude, you can't get training out of $25 for any other thing, compared to a Baofeng. Even though a lot of people like to dunk on them, and I've said this before in the Preparedness Mindset podcast, there's not a lot of things that you can get $25 worth of training out of compared to a Baofeng. Don't stop there. Don't be like, oh, now I'm set for the end of the world. I have my $25 radio that some child made for me. But
allegedly,
if you just want to, allegedly, if you just want to, hey, I just want to learn how to use chirp and be able to program radios and have a basic understanding of what frequencies are and how that works. That's not a bad place to start. And I know a lot of people turn their fucking nose up to it. And I am not an elitist when it comes to comms. You know what your budget is. Not everybody has thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to go ahead and drop on a radio. The only time I do kind of eye roll is whenever I see people with $15,000 nods and then $25 radio. I'm like, maybe allocation on that would have maybe would have been a little bit better.
Yeah, so that's kind of
looking at.
That's what I'm at right now.
A $3,000 rifle, like a $4,000 scope on it. But tell me about your Baofeng.
I know, right? Yeah, so my if I have to put on armor and grab my go-to rifle is like a BCM that's all kitted out. It's like $5,000, and I've got my PVS 14
arrow precision Solus with like a thermal
Yeah, I got a
optic
thermal
right here, like
on it
right in
now.
front of
That's
us.
like a $5,000 setup too, and then I've got
I'm
my
about to say,
comms is
I have an LWRC, so like I cannot talk shit on having a gun that is very expensive.
Well,
That's
at the
great,
same time,
but-
this is
but-
your job, though.
yeah,
This is not
exactly.
his job.
exactly. But you
It could be.
obviously have
It should be.
invested money in certain types of radios. So, but yeah, so I have these thousands and thousands of dollars of gear and everything, and then I have a Baofeng that's in like one of these like
3D printed.
yeah,
Yes.
3D printed eBay special clamshell. You know,
Mhm.
Well, and I think, and I want to speak from like just. I kind of come from like the two sides. From the law or from the military side, you're given like an embedder, or you're given I don't even like what even they're using these days, because
Like
we
a
still have
Harris?
an embedder.
Yeah.
And they work okay, and you stuff them in a mag pouch, and if they work, great. If not, you'll figure it out later. But in law enforcement, that's a lifeline. Like I wish people could understand like how much the communication side, you could have some guy who's, doing like bill drills in sub like 1 second and doing all the cool CQB stuff. But the second that there's 3 or more people there and he's going to have a problem, the communication side is going to be a lot more important than like your split time or anything like that. Especially now that we moved over to like, I don't want to like dox us too bad, but our 800s just got hacked actually recently, and when that went down, holy crap, was it kind of an eye opener for in the law enforcement world? Like, hey, we should probably. luckily we and again I'm new to this 800s. We have like several different programming channels we can use, so we were able to get on the state ones and kind of somewhat work okay, but. The second you lose communications, like everything goes south really quick.
Yeah, no, communications is something that's extremely important, and it won't be important until your life depends on it. In most cases, I mean, same thing goes with medical people. It's not sexy. I can't sexily go onto the range and program a radio frequency, but I can sure have that slow motion Suicide Boys with the filters, me running a bill drill that I slow-mo down so you can't tell how fast I'm going. So it's really, I think, like an attitude thing. And I think maybe not even an attitude thing. I don't know if that's the correct word for it, but it's just kind of like you don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of people grew up with like some form of firearm, if you're from the South, maybe. And you have an understanding of like, oh, pop culture, guns are cool. Guns are awesome. I played, Modern Warfare 2 growing up, things of that nature, but you don't necessarily have that exposure from the communications world. Ham radio is a hobby that is dying. Like I am the youngest person in my ham radio club by decades.
Mhm.
So, I think a lot of that just has to do with kind of like our attitude with stuff that doesn't make us look cool.
Well, can I interject real quick? Do you think
ahead,
that
Mark.
with the ham radio crowd, with the ham radio community, do you think that there's a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of elitism in that community as well? That's what I continue to hear about. I've talked to individuals like Risky Krisky and some of these other guys that are kind of on the fringe that do a little bit of edgy stuff, but also is trying to get into the communication realm, but constantly comes back to that aspect of the ham radio crowd, that there's just a bunch of fuds and elitists that want to gatekeep, and it's like, oh, well, if you're gonna run a Baofeng, then you can't be a part of our group. Do you find it that's the truth, or is it somewhere in between?
I personally, my ham radio club is a bunch of very, very old people from Louisiana. So they see me walk in, this like Asian person that's covered in tattoos, and they have been nothing but having like open arms, giving me like snacks and stuff. Like they are the sweetest, most kind-hearted people. I think it really does depend, because that is not a one size fits all experience. That I've heard people that have nightmares,
That's fair.
nightmare stories from ham radio clubs where they're like, dude, we won't even talk to you until you go pay Papa federal government X amount of dollars to go take your test and become licensed. So I think it definitely depends from club to club. I do think you're seeing a little bit more of a push back in the opposite direction with, the different sort of YouTubers that are making this ham radio, this hobby, a little bit more popular. However, I think just the nature of a lot of the FCC self-regulation, bullshit is kind of breeds an attitude of, us versus them. I personally have never experienced. The people in my ham radio club, the people in the ham radio community that I've met with have been nothing short of absolute gods or
That's awesome.
absolute angels. So they are phenomenal people. And I feel really bad for people that don't have that experience. But I know it can be like ultra futtery.
Yeah, it's kind of like you said, futtery. It's you show up to you went out and spend your hard-earned money on like an AR-15, go to your local gun range, and they say you can only shoot one round a second, and you have to pay a bunch of membership fees and take a bunch of classes, and God forbid if you shoot more than 30 rounds in an hour, because then they kick you off the range, and then you're just like, well, I don't want to go shoot this anymore because it's not fun.
Don't forget the brass goblins too.
Oh yeah, the guy that follows you behind you. Go, hey, are you going to pick up your brass? Can I have it? Did you kind of get into the civilian side of things? So you said your ham radio, your group's pretty cool. Do you guys? Is it a fairly active group, or is it one of those? Hey, once a quarter we may do something, or?
Oh yeah, no, that they are very active because predominantly it's made up of retirees. So they do like weekly, lunches, and then they do, a once a month meeting, and then they do field days, which if you are listening and you don't know what a ham radio field day is, it's pretty much like all the ham radio guys go to a park, set up all their stuff, and then people can come and learn. Sometimes they'll have people teach little classes on different radios. If you have a field day near you and you want to learn a little bit more about ham radio, that would be a phenomenal place to start. And they're super kid friendly. So,
do you guys do Foxhound events?
Yes. Oh, I love those so much. Those are my favorite.
Tell us more. Tell us more. Do you want me to start singing the song?
No, it's fun because it's like 33% of the people don't know what we're talking about right now. So what's a Foxhound event?
So a Foxhound or a Fox Hunt event, depending on who you ask, is essentially you're going to have a little transmitter that's usually about 0.5 watt in power, sometimes even lower. That's going to be transmitting like a little burst of power on a specific frequency, every couple minutes. It goes beep, and you have to use direction finding to be able to find this little transmitter. So they're really neat. They have plenty of ham radio clubs that do those events. I think we did our last one at a local park, so it was pretty easy to find because the park wasn't that big. But depending on the area that you set it up at, you can get really, really deep into the woods with that type of stuff. So I find them super fun.
So that actually wants to turn the page. Makes me want to turn to the page of the next conversation we have. So everyone talks about use your Baofeng and you're going to kill everybody in 100 square mile radius of you because everyone's going to find you. Why is that? I guess is the best way I can to first ask that question. Unless you have unless it's like one of those really long convoluted answers. If you just want to give us like a quick,
Jefe, but you're gonna get it because you asked.
Okay.
So
all right, I want it. That's what
if you wear a ghillie suit, right? Like the nicest ghillie suit that money can buy, and you put all the cool sticks and leaves in it.
We are looking at a ghillie suit right now.
Our sniper instructor may hear this, and he's gonna cat out. But there is like if I were to take that and get like all of the coolest foliage, have the most expensive ghillie suit money could buy, and I stand in the middle of a Walmart, is that concealing me from anything?
Sure
Can
ain't.
you spot me from across the Walmart? Be like, who's that tree looking motherfucker standing next to the chips?
It really depends on which Walmart you're talking about.
Right. You may just look like a normal citizen of Walmart.
I mean, because
depending on what Walmart you go to.
there's a few Walmarts that I'm very familiar with that are pretty methed up, you know. So
Right. So take the inverse of that, right? So if I have the nicest ghillie suit that money can buy, and I'm in the woods and I'm using the terrain to my advantage, and I'm making sure to obfuscate, my physical shape with phenomenal placement of my body and according to the terrain, and being super duper slow, right? I'm going to be really hard to find. Encryption on a radio does not make it less hard to find you. It just makes it so whenever I find you, I can't hear what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
So that analogy, I don't know if it worked, but
it's kind of like, would you?
Things you could do.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but
no, you're good, Mark. Go ahead.
Is it kind of like the same point to what they refer to as privacy channels with like GMRS radios? Is that the same type of thing?
The way I kind of got described it, and maybe this is a good way to do it. If you are in the middle of a field in the middle of the night and you turn a white light on, everyone's going to see it for a second, and if you turn it off and move, you're still going to give people a general location of where you were when you turned that white light on. Mm-hmm. No matter if you have an A256 encrypted radio or you're using a Baofeng, the second you hit that button on, you're transmitting your location. You're transmitting something where people can, if they're looking for it, can find it. Mm-hmm. And if you turn it off and move, am I correct at all? I don't know if I'm even.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty good metaphor. I think a lot of people, and this is so dependent on, where you live, because some places, like if you live in a super duper urban environment where they have, a ton of airports and there's a ton of radio traffic that people are constantly monitoring, it's going to be a lot harder to transmit on frequencies that you're not supposed to, compared to if you live somewhere like I do in the middle of nowhere and nobody's looking for you. You have to first have the assumption that someone is looking for you at the specific time that you are transmitting. So I think a lot of people inflate the sort of threat for direction finding, because you have to think of most likely versus most deadly threats. Whenever we develop our threat matrix, and I know you as a civil affairs guy, you know what I'm talking about.
I'm sitting on the edge of my seat now. Go ahead.
Yeah. So whenever you make your threat matrix, meaning for our listeners that might not have that background, your most likely threat versus your most deadly threat, right? Your most likely threat, whenever you're talking on the ham radio, is when you're not supposed to, is some bubba that's a volunteer FCC agent that's going to report you up, report that somebody was talking on this frequency, and then your most deadly is if we're talking about in a non-permissive environment, having a near peer threat with somebody with advanced enough technology to be able to direction find you and then be like, artillery, go there. So my job is not to tell people to go break the law. I see that pretty often on these communications pages, and that just glows so bright to me. My job is to explain what the law is to people and allow adults to make their own informed decisions. So I'm not going to say, go and transmit right next to a repeater and say, fuck the FCC and all that stuff. But at the same token, chances are if you're using, FRS frequencies with your Baofeng just for training on the flat range, nobody's going to give a fuck.
Yeah. And it's kind of interesting to Steven, like, because I got into like the SDR stuff, the system defined radios, and you're like, oh man, it's going to show everyone doing all this illegal stuff, and it's going to be so cool to look at, or just like, and then even with, I guess a better analogy would be is if you're in the middle of the field and turn on an IR light, everyone with night vision is going to see you, or thermals, but not everyone has night vision or thermals, or no one cares.
Yeah, everyone with night vision or thermals that's facing your direction can see you.
Mm-hmm.
So
direction finding is so difficult, and I know that, if we're talking about a very advanced threat, in our notional scenario that might have really robust electronic warfare equipment, then maybe they could pick us up like that. I snapped. I don't know if the mic caught it. Yeah, but for most people, what your threat is going to be is, your volunteer FCC coordinators that are going to be like, don't talk on there. So I think we have a lot of this like fear, and I think a lot of people that are typically like, don't use a fucking Baofeng, you're fucking stupid, but buy this other product that I'm selling that is so much better. It comes from a place that they sell stuff. I don't sell anything except for knowledge. So all I can do is give you the knowledge, and it's up to you to make the decision.
Well, those FCC like snitches, and I don't know how much information I can get, but it sounds kind of like you and your boys going. We have this all the time in the cop world where we have a public river where guys will just go shoot like a couple rounds off to either test guns or just messing around. And by the time someone tells us and we get there and figure everything out, there, everyone's long gone and no one cares anymore. So you don't really even respond to those half the time. Is that kind of like the FCC? Some neckbeard in his basement is like, someone transmitted on frequency 162.79 at this time at this power and sent it off to the FCC, and the FCC kind of looks at him like, yeah, cool. Sorry, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty accurate, unless you're intentionally interfering with ham radio frequencies. Like if, say, you started your own pirate FM radio station.
Yeah.
Chances are just talking, as long as you don't get on there, you don't cuss, and you don't get on there and be like, my full Christian name is, my social security number is, it's going to be exceptionally difficult for most people to find you. Like, I think a lot of people who are like, man, don't do that. Direction finding is so easy, they'll find you. I'm like, do you know how to direction find somebody? Have you done it? They're like, no, but, and I'm like, go do it. And then tell me, come go do it with off-the-shelf hardware, and then come tell me how easy it is to direction find somebody. Because it's not.
Yeah, it's because essentially it's you just spinning in circles and hoping you can pick up the transmission at the right direction, right? With a
right
SDR.
At the right time. The right time.
So so I brought so I just got back from JRTC last month. I brought my SDR out there. And I sat there with a laptop, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, this is the frequency they're transmitting on." And the some of the Intel guys are like, "Oh, that's so," like jotting down notes. What direction it's coming from? I'm like, yeah, it's coming from somewhere. I don't know.
The sky.
What do you mean? Yeah, it's like the sky around the electric magnetic waves around me are telling me these things. I'm like seancing this stuff. So it's definitely one of those you can get in trouble, and it's something that you should not go do without the you should not go and do without the proper licensing and proper training for it. But I think the ham community definitely uses that as kind of a bludgeon for newer people. I want to give my quick example. This happened to me probably about when I was in college, like in the mid 2000s. I tried to join a ham radio club. And it was the epitome of fuddery. It was I was too young. One, they wouldn't really let me do anything, and then two, they wouldn't talk to you until you had like a Tech 2 license or something like that. And even then, they just weren't very nice people to be around. So I could see a lot of organizations doing that sort of stuff. Kind of is killing the ham radio community. Would you say that instead of that the next kind of iteration for that would be more of the local boys radio, like GMRS club, or like some like overlanding group that does GMRS stuff all the time, or do you still think ham's the way that we need to do a culture shift to?
No, I don't think ham is the only way you can get out and go train. I think that a lot of those people that have that mindset are going to die very soon. That's just an objective like fact that I know that the average age of your average ham radio club member is like in an octogenarian, but they're probably some of Mark's friends actually. But
Got him.
I think that yes, ham radio is a phenomenal resource. Your ham radio club is going to be a phenomenal resource if they're not absolute FUDs. But there are other things, like if you live in an area that has overlanding, has like a hiking group, has, you know, all this different stuff, then yes, that could be the option. Or, you know, maybe you take a little bit of initiative and community building and say, hey, me and, you know, the 10 dudes that go out to the range are gonna, you know, do X, Y, and Z and start learning stuff, and then we're gonna teach, you know, our friends' wives about this stuff and their kids, and then eventually we'll have our neighbors, you know, being able to use this stuff. So it's just building a community around sort of like a common ideal.
Oh, that sounds like too much work. We aren't.
Yeah,
do that.
I know. I'd rather complain on the internet. That's what I'd rather do.
Yeah. And take pictures with my vans and my nods outside of Waffle House at 3:00 in the morning.
Yeah, I mean, how am I going to stay the top commenter on my Facebook group if I'm not constantly complaining?
Well, you're on a board of directors for a range, so I don't know.
There's that too.
They're really big into 22s and not shooting more than one round a second, though. Yeah. Which a lot of this is pointing at the general futtery on over here. So ham radio groups are always a good place to start. Taking classes is always a great place to start. Who are some other people would you recommend? Like if you're the TikTok mind melted people that have to watch it, like who are some people you recommend getting some sort of like free training on, like either YouTube or Instagram?
Yeah, Ham Radio Crash Course. I don't mean to dick ride Josh, but he is a phenomenal resource. And he makes this stuff really, really digestible. I can't recommend him enough. S2 Underground has a bunch of really cool, like medium form, like medium length videos. Mojave actually has a YouTube channel too, and they push out a couple, you know, videos on good information. I have a YouTube channel with one video. One video. Oh no, it's one video and 2 shorts.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Yep. And then I get bullied online. So that's I also have like a YouTube channel. I'm hoping to post more in the future, though I say that, but I don't like getting bullied online. So that's
it gets easier.
I know. And I know that's just me. You know, that comes with the territory of being online. So yeah, I'm being a little bit facetious. Most of it is just because I don't want to film outside right now because Louisiana, it's like, you know, that level of Super Mario where you're fighting the sun. That's what it's like whenever you go outside right now.
Yes, I can confirm. I was, the unit we were supporting, I think the first 2 days had like about 280 heat casualties.
Yep.
The first 2 days. And then, this every day you put your plate carrier on and it instantly it's just moisture.
Yeah. I've been to NTC. I've been to Iraq. I've been to Afghanistan. Been to the hottest days of Korea. And I never came close to being a heat cat until I went to what used to be called Fort Polk.
Still called Polk.
Is it called Polk?
No, it's called Johnson. But
Jesus. So
Johnson.
I know,
feel like that's more accurate.
It is. Yeah. I mean, and incidentally, I was there the week before Katrina hit. So
yeah, we were there. This last hurricane, we were driving a bus from Missouri down to Louisiana, and about halfway through, they realized that maybe this wasn't the best idea. So, how did you end up back in Louisiana? I'm sure your military career took you to cool and wonderful places. Is this something you naturally came back to, or did OTG bring you back?
No, I've been living here. I mean, I go do like training and stuff other places, but I've always come back to here. It's I would say it's a love-hate relationship. I have a phenomenal job. I work with great people. So that's kind of what's keeping me in the eighth circle of hell, or underneath God's magnifying glass.
That's a good point.
But I'll probably move eventually. Whenever I get tired of just going from one air-conditioned place to the other air-conditioned place. I actually have a friend of mine, Viking Reconnaissance, who recently did a stint over at JRTC, and he asked me, he said, dude, what do you do for fun out here? I'm like, oh, you go from one air-conditioned place to the next air-conditioned place. But you get used to it, like, after time. I think, like anything, like me, if you took my Vietnamese southern ass and you put me anywhere below 50 degrees, I'm dying. So it's kind of like, you know, an ebb and a flow with being able to tolerate extremes.
I'm getting ready to head out to my property this weekend because, you know, it's a holiday weekend, so I get a little bit extra time off, and the low one night's going to be like 48 degrees. So
Damn.
yeah, I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm so looking forward to
temperatures. So yeah, we went to Natchitoches. We took is it Natchitoches? Is that what that town's called?
So there's Natchez and there's Natchitoches, which is
Natchitoches. Wherever they filmed, wherever they filmed Steel Magnolias.
Yeah, Natchez.
Natchez. Yeah,
right on the border of Mississippi.
Does not look like it needs to be spelled that way. No, yeah, that was our we had a day where we were just trying to figure out what to do, and we had rental cars, so that's where we ended up going, and was severely disappointed.
I'm about to say, y'all went there and y'all didn't go like that's like kind of. I mean, there's a couple decent places to eat, but that's about it. I mean, there's not much to do in the whole fucking state, to be honest, besides go sin in New Orleans.
That was way too far of a drive for us. That's like,
yeah.
So no, it was, yeah. I do need to, and I'm kind of upset about this. My tattoo artist, she moved down to New Orleans, so I need, like, unfortunately, I have to go down there and get some stuff finished up. But, and I have a note right here, and I wanted to get back to this. You talked about professional combat athlete in the pre-show. What is that? And talk to us a little bit about your experience with that.
Yeah, no, so I've been doing combat sports for the better part of 15 years of my life. Got into it super duper young because I was a nerd. I played like quiz bowl and shit. So my dad was a huge like OG. I'm going to say this organization, a lot of people might not know it, but Pride, which was a Japanese fighting promotion they didn't test for steroids. They had it in all bold on the fight contracts.
Yep.
So my dad was a huge like OG like mixed martial arts fan, and so he used to like
celebrate in June every month or every year.
Yeah, that's June. June. But so he got into, or he was like a big fan of that. So like that's how my dad is like the classic stoic like Vietnamese father. But that's like how we used to bond, is we used to just sit there and not talk and watch fights together. So I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I got into combat sports, got into like Muay Thai, started, you know, doing the whole MMA thing, you know, post Ronda Rousey, who, you know, now I know she's not the most popular figure, but then she was a fucking like groundbreaker, and I still have the utmost respect for her, even though she's kind of tarnished her legacy a little bit with her mouth. But I still have nothing but the utmost respect for Ronda Rousey, and I think Ronda Rousey is like broke all those barriers to like let little girls know, like, oh hey, you can do this, and not only do this, but you can be somebody that is so violently famous. And so I did that, started doing mixed martial arts. I have a couple fights under my belt, a couple boxing fights, a couple Muay Thai fights. And so I did that, and then, you know, realized that cutting from 150 something pounds walking around to 125 for like $300 wasn't worth my time.
Yeah.
So now I just do it as a hobby. I leave my comfy IT job and then I go punch people in the face. So
like the Mark Zuckerberg thing.
All right. I tell people like the only exercise that you'll do is the one that you hate the least. Even though doing exercises that you hate is good and it builds character. So for me, like that's always been like kickboxing, jiu-jitsu, like that's something I genuinely enjoy doing. So that's why it's been a part of my life for however many years.
So what's the I guess, are you just still kind of doing the MMA side, or are you picking kind of a discipline right now to kind of really focus in on?
No, I'm just doing a little bit of kickboxing, a little bit of jiu-jitsu here and there. I'm not really doing too much like hard MMA training. I just recently snapped the ligament in my ankle, so
nice.
Yeah. I get a horrific combat sports injury about every 5 years, so it was time. And so I'm like, man, I just do it enough to stay in shape, but like also still have that in your back pocket, because that's a good skill to have. You don't just lose that, once you leave the gym. You're like, oh, I can feel a little bit safer if I have to go somewhere without my gun. So that's mainly why I like it, and it's so fun, dude. And especially like you, Jefe, that you work in a field where you probably have to go hands on with people, a couple times a week. Having that basic skill makes your life so much easier. And it's for everybody. I think doing some sort of martial art really does teach you, hey, I, one, am not made of glass and I can take a punch and punch somebody. Or two, if I'm a guy that gets winded going up a flight of stairs, seeing red will not help me beat John Jones in a fist fight. So a little bit of self-actualization there.
Well, I think what are the 2A gun community, gun culture, or whatever you want to call it, they have a really hard time understanding that everything we try to do, or at least at the point where you should be at, is how to, without sounding like a sociopath, how to control people, whether it be physically, mentally, either by communicating with them to leave you the fuck alone, or actually having to go hands-on with somebody, or actually having to use whatever tool you decide to use to have you leave you the fuck alone. And so always adding more skills to help you communicate that or control people, whether it be jiu-jitsu, whether it be Muay Thai, Krav Maga, although Krav Maga is just how to kick people in the nuts. That's really all I learned.
And gouge their eyes.
Gouge their eyes, yeah. I
nuts,
took it for like...
eyes, nuts, eyes. I have some homies that train in it, but I do think it's a little silly.
It's definitely... Krav is a really great... so the gym that we have here that was teaching Krav was about 4 females, all about the tender heights of 4'11" to 5'2", and mostly in their late 40s, early 50s, where we're learning some sort of defense. Like, yeah, jiu-jitsu is probably not your sport. This might be like just punch people in the nuts as hard as you can and go away. And we live in a relatively small and very non-violent community. If you don't go to the bar district from the hours of 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., the chances of you to be involved in some sort of violent crime is like almost zero. So it's always great to see people training, but Krav is definitely was not for me.
Yeah, unless you're Archer.
Yeah,
he makes it look cool.
I think TV. I think that's what the problem is. You talked earlier, Lindsay, a little bit about it. Is the like media culture behind things for the longest of time kind of give you a wishy-washy, or at least a unrealistic expectation of what I guess what some sort of violent encounter will be. Like
Right.
if you think of everything from, and I meant to bring this up with Caleb, like you've watched the old James Bond movies where he's like judo chopping someone and just drop like a sack of shit. And you're just like, every time I watch that, I'm instantly taken out of it because you just know like, no, that wouldn't work because I tried it one time and it doesn't work.
Or a movie where a guy gets stabbed one time and he's dead.
Yeah.
You know?
Unless you hit the
People can take a lot of stabs.
yes,
Mhm.
I've seen it. It's kind of crazy. You're like, wow, how are you still alive, dog? So always training that, and I just want to like capstone up this rant I just had. Always training in some ways to communicate or to control people, whether it be physically or just talking with them, is always a great skill to have in your back pocket. Don't hurt yourself every 5 years, but have some fun with it.
Verbal judo is the most important martial art that you can learn.
It's like, crazy how well it works too.
Yeah. The second you like bump into somebody at the bar, like, hey, motherfucker, what are you doing? You're like, oh man, hey, I'm so sorry. I wasn't watching where I'm going. I'm so sorry. I apologize, man. Can I get you a drink? Dude, people change instantly the second you use that verbal judo on them. And you're avoiding confrontation. Because like that doesn't make you a pussy. Avoiding confrontation doesn't make you a pussy. It makes you live longer. So anybody that's listening to this, yes, go learn jiu-jitsu, go learn boxing, go learn Krav Maga, how to hit people in the nuts and gouge their eyes out. But also just having an understanding of how to de-escalate situations is something that's so important. I think actually Craig Douglas from Shivworks does cover that a little bit in his classes. I've never been to one. I really want to go.
I really want to go to. Every time I see him, like, I need to start saving money for that, and then I go buy stupid stuff.
Yep.
And I wish I remember who said this. It's one of those quotes that always stuck with me. It was like, you can carry a gun or you can carry an ego, but you can't carry both.
Yep.
And that's.
It's funny you're going to say that. If people learn to remove their ego a lot more, this is what I was going to say, is if people would learn to remove their ego a lot more often when it comes to encountering other people, they would find that we would have, not absolutely safe, but safer communities, I would say, especially where we live, where you have college students and military guys cohabitating
in a bar district.
In a bar district, yeah.
I bet you those fist fights are really fun.
No, they're funny to watch.
Yeah, like to watch. Yeah.
Oh no, it's usually not. It's very one-sided, unless I think the funniest one I saw was it was some like E5 or E6 who was a former like Alabama wrestler, and it was some. And for a while in our community, some of the fraternities had like a game, and the army didn't help. The soldiers didn't help at all. Was to try to get a guy's dog tags, and they hung it up at the fraternities. So the Joes will go out to the bar district having their dog tags hanging out because that's a fashion statement, I guess.
That's boot behavior.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy. You'd be surprised what kind of boot behavior you still see as like 4s and 5s. But this big huge Alabama dude, like 6'3", 280 pounds of solid mass, and some kid yanked his dog tags off, and he's picked them up and folded them like a goddamn sandwich, like right in front of us. And his buddy's like, "What are you gonna do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. He handled you pretty good." I mean, we eventually had to take him into custody, but it wasn't one of those things where I'm going to try to fight this dude because I saw what he could do, and I don't like that. So you said you had a couple fights underneath your belt. We talked about Ronda Rousey.
I learned what an arm bar was from Ronda Rousey.
Oh,
mm-hmm.
I learned about the effects of a glass jaw from Ronda Rousey. That's like,
okay, you say that, but I promise you, Chris Cyborg couldn't take a punch from Amanda Nunes, and Chris Cyborg looked like Wanderlei Silva in a dress.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true. No, it's.
I think she just has that. Like Amanda Nunes, you watch her hit girls, and their eyes change. They're like, I've never been hit like that before.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think what the interesting this kind of take a step back and looking at this, like the overarching picture of like Ronda Rousey was this undefeated great fighter, and then got that when she fought Holly Holmes,
got that head kick,
and then after that, she lost that fight, was gone for several months, and then the first major hit from Nunez, it was kind of like, okay, that was the end of her career when it came to MMA, and it was because it's just that I don't know what it like. I'm I've done like 2 amateur fights in my entire life, and I've been hit a couple times. When you get hit like that, you're like, I don't want to do that again. That's not fun at all. And sometimes that fight just gets taken out of you with that hit. What's your thoughts on that?
So the chin is an expendable and finite resource. What that means for people who may not have any sort of combat sports experience, it's like the more hits you take, like you look at like Chuck Liddell, right? Chuck Liddell's main weapon was biting down hard in his mouthpiece and throwing the hardest leather possible towards you in hopes that he would take you out before you take him out. Whenever he took enough punishment and that chin just went, then, you see the downfall of a legend, right? So, I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's physical of like, I've been hit and my body literally cannot absorb that impact anymore. And I think for some people it's psychological, right? It's like, oh, I've been hit and then I got hit again and my jaw snapped. So the next time I get hit, my brain just goes fight or flight. I'm fucking turtle shelling up and I'm quitting. So for a lot of people, I think it's different the way that those losses can have an effect on you.
No, and it's definitely like we met. Was it 2 years ago at SHOT Show? We met Chuck Liddell.
Yeah,
that guy. I mean, interesting human being. I don't say great, interesting human being. But he's
by the end of the night.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that was happening, but he's definitely one. Again, as you said, it's like a finite resource. You shouldn't be hit in the face that many times. That's all I can really say about
No, it's very not good for your brain.
Yes.
Yeah, and I from my own experience, I participated in a amateur kickboxing match, and had to cut weight. So I understand and respect fighters who do that on a regular basis. And got into the ring and fought a dude that was literally half my age, and I would say probably in the first 30 seconds broke my nose, and I just did not want to be there anymore. I was like, this really sucks. And I can remember about 2 days after the fight, I went back into my gym and just kind of hit the bag a little bit. And every time I punched the bag, it felt, I could feel my brain sloshing back and forth a little bit every time I punched the heavy bag. And I was like, it's probably a good idea to take a couple weeks off and just let things heal up a little bit. And you want to talk about perspective on what these fighters go through, what the human body goes through, through the physiology of getting hit, like the jaw is a finite resource, like you said. I don't think that I could personally at my age, especially now, could go back into the ring like that again. I would love to, but I've got to protect what few brain cells I have left.
I was just sitting there drinking Mick Ultras.
I know, right?
Talking on a podcast. So you said you've done what's it, Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. Are you actively training those still? Are you still trying to like get belts and all that stuff, or is this one of those things that like you just like doing it because it's a good hobby?
It's a for fun thing now. There's a couple names, there's a couple things that would intrigue me to go back. But like I said, you can half-ass do a lot of stuff in your life. You can, if I played on a recreational pickleball league, I could probably half-ass that. You can't half-ass, cutting 30 pounds and then going into a cage where another person is going to try to rip your head off your body. So that's kind of my thought behind it. It's like, I enjoy doing it. It's phenomenal exercise. It's a great skill to have. But as far as like going in and, getting another fight under my belt, I'm like, man, I'm too comfortable now. I've kind of gotten like old and fat and fucking I make too much money and I don't want to go out there and risk life and limb literally for a couple $100. So
was there a big MMA scene down in Louisiana?
Oh, huge, dude. What do you mean? Daniel Cormier, Dustin Poirier? Like, I think we have like one of the highest rates of UFC fighters per capita. Like Lafayette was where I'm from. Like Daniel Cormier, 2-time champ. Dustin Poirier, absolute legend. And I can name like 3 or 4 other UFC fighters from, just very, very small towns with like 2 traffic lights in them just around me. So it's because there's nothing else to do here, man.
That was fair. No.
Fist fight in the parking lot. That's about it.
Yeah. And I've like, it's definitely one of those like that, like the blind spot was, I remember like UFC was really big in college and all I remember was GSP. And that's like all I really paid attention to. So, are you still pretty I say active? Do you still follow UFC a lot? Is that?
Oh yeah, that is. I am on a Saturday. I'm watching
Buffalo Wild Wings.
Nice. Yeah.
Throwing back
at my house because Buffalo Wild Wings is nasty. I'd rather people like, man, would you rather spend $40 on some nasty ass food and like a couple beers, or would you rather spend this more money on a pay-per-view, but then get to eat delicious food from your house and not have to drive anywhere or worry about getting an Uber? There's not Uber where I live, so I have to convince my husband to DD me. So, no, I'm a huge MMA nerd. I think it's between that and communications, which is like my autistic special interest.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Fighting and talking. That's good ones to have.
Yeah.
Most of it's like anime, hentai, and this really obscure Nintendo game from like 1983 that you probably never heard of, but had a lot of pixel dicks in it.
Okay. What?
What?
What are you talking about?
What? Yeah. So, anyways,
no, real quick, I'm sorry. I have to go back to Ronda Rousey just for a second.
Okay, back to Ronda Rousey. Third time.
Just for a second. She and her husband have co-written a graphic novel. It's called Expect the Unexpected. It's supposed to be out here pretty soon. They're doing the fundraising for it right now.
His autism is comic books, by the way.
Yeah, I'm a comic book nerd a little bit.
What's your favorite series, Mark?
Oh, favorite series. It's a good one. I've always really enjoyed like the Predator versus Alien series that Dark Horse put out in the 90s. That was one of my big series. The first like graphic novels that I collected was the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Those were.
And I just found out about that today. Like originally, they were all just they wore black masks.
Yeah,
and they all looked the exact same,
black and white. Yep, it was all
it was crazy. Yeah. They didn't have like super.
No,
super
they did.
Unique
they
things.
didn't do that until they put out the animated series, so that the kids could tell the difference between who was who.
And I didn't know it was a spoof over Daredevil. Like the whole Ninja Turtles thing was.
Yep, the hand and the foot. Yep.
Hand and foot.
Yep.
And that the acid that burned Daredevil's eyes was the same acid that went to the sewer to turn the Ninja Turtles into the turtles into Ninja Turtles.
It wasn't acid. It was
or whatever.
It was nuclear goo. But
okay,
cool.
Right.
The ooze, right? Come on now.
I got bullied in high school for completely different reasons.
Yeah, and then one of my other favorite series that has been thrust into the mainstream here recently is the Infinity Gauntlet series. I mean, I've just dated myself on all of these different comic book series that I really like, but yeah, those are pretty much the ones that I've gotten into. The ones that are really kind of pertinent to our like modern day stuff is Black Powder Red Earth. That is a really awesome.
Wasn't Garantham a character in that at one point?
Yep,
okay.
Yep. Well, at least they drew him.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they put him in one of the comic books, but those are some really cool freaking, pipe hitter type comic books. So, but anyway,
Battle Secretary is really good too.
Yeah. Battle Secretary. The artists the artist that did that, actually drew in a friend of ours into the comic books, Angel of Verdun. She has one of the just a quick character that they put into one of the comic books, I think. So yeah.
Sell me your Makarov barrel, Ashley. I'm just gonna put that in here.
Yeah. So anyway, Holly Holmes, Expect the Unexpected graphic novel coming out soon.
Holly Holmes or Ronda Rousey?
I did that again.
I say because
it's Ronda Rousey. Yeah.
If you want to talk about Expect the Unexpected, that's Holly Holmes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But so outside of communications and UFC, that's about it for you. Is there any other weird hobbies that you're into?
I mean, your normal like autistic person hobbies, where it's like I love building computers and like building virtual machines and like servers and stuff like that. And I like video games.
That's normal.
quite a bit.
What game are you playing now?
It's normal for people on the spectrum. So I'm not actually autistic. I'm autistic for the meme.
Yeah, everyone is.
Yeah.
So what game are you playing right now?
Oh man, I've actually started a replay of Baldur's Gate 3. So I used to be a big like Dungeons and Dragons fan.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only fun if you have a group of people that take it the same amount of serious as you. Either not serious at all, somewhere in between, or very serious. If you are all on different levels, it's not going to be fun. But if you have like a group of people, you're like, man, let's just get hammered and play like the goofiest fucking story we could do. Then it's something that's really fun. So Baldur's Gate 3 is just another like D&D, game created by Larian. So that's what I've been playing recently. Ready or Not, which is like a hyper realistic CQB simulator. I don't know if you guys have heard of it.
Yeah, we tried playing it, but it's very similar to what you just described. There's 3 types of people that play Ready or Not: the not serious, the somewhat serious, and the super serious, and they cannot play together. You'll not have a good time if you all try to play together. I'm the guy that walks around with a shotgun and just hopes for the best. Usually works out pretty good, but yeah, some levels it does not.
Right on. I'm too much of a normie. I'm just still over here trying to mess around with Fallout 3 and Skyrim. So
I feel like there's a part in everyone's gaming journey where you just keep on going back over and over to the classics. Like my big thing is like I don't think I've consumed any video game like content outside of like maybe once or twice playing Ready or Not with the boys, and watching like people play Ocarina of Time. Like that's exactly where it's kind of like the Mayan calendar ended for me in 1998.
Right. Have you gotten into? You were talking about computers and stuff like that. This is probably, it's not the same, but have you gotten or explored drones at all?
I wish I could say that I have, but they don't really, and they're a phenomenal situational awareness tool. I've flown a couple. My coworker's a big drone guy, so he'll give me some like occasion. He's like, "Oh, go play with this," and I'll go play with it, and I'll be like, "Okay, cool," but it doesn't really like grab me like everything else does. And I know it has a very like useful place, especially like in a squad or tactics scenario. But communications workspace on Instagram, if you want to learn about drone stuff, he's got a lot of drone stuff. Christopher Rancy, I think is how you pronounce his last name. He puts out stuff about drones. I am not a drone guy. I wish I could say that I was, but I'm not. I already have too many expensive hobbies between guns and gaming computers and $90 pay-per-views every weekend. I don't think I can afford much else.
Yeah, I totally understand that. I mean, I just have a freaking DJI Mini Pro, which is meant for YouTube stuff. But let me tell you, after watching some of the content that has been coming out of Eastern Europe right now and the conflict over there, and how drones have been injected into that conflict, that was a huge wake-up call for me to start dabbling in, just to understand it. I don't need to be an expert, but just to understand its usefulness and how it can be applied to, small unit tactics and stuff like that. And that's one of the things that we kind of touched on with our podcast with the Night Fighter. He talked about that a little bit. So that was something that, I just kind of toss out there for, people like yourself who are kind of into that techie realm a little bit, to see, what their take is. And that's actually a pretty good take on it.
Yeah, no, I definitely wish I had a lot more time to delve into it. Maybe I will, who's to say? I might pick it up later on, but I think in the moment right now, there's so many other people that are doing phenomenal drone content in the space that I don't really have anything of value to add on to that conversation.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So I do think, like, taking lessons, like you were saying, Mark, and I'm sorry to cut you off, from like the Ukraine and depending on what your personal opinions are on that conflict, that's not for me to say. Mm-hmm. To see what those guys are doing with commercial off the shelf stuff, whether it's like communications, drones, everything else, I think is super duper neat. And I think could be definitely like a learning point for a lot of civilians.
Well, what's really nice about it's nice is a very not the correct term, I suppose. But what's been really interesting, especially with the Eastern European stuff and the Middle East stuff that's coming out right now, is that there's so much exposure to what's going on and people explaining what's going on with a very high level of detail. So you can watch some drone footage from Ukraine and get almost the exact, especially if it's like a homemade explosives or homemade 3D printed delivery system for drones or whatever communication systems. Like, they go into, like, people are willing to explain this stuff so you can look at, hey, not only did I witness it being effective, but I also have like a starting point for if I want to emulate this, or at least can build onto it. Mm-hmm. I know GWAT started kind of getting that way. I feel like, it was very televised, very like the soldier mounted GoPro was pretty prolific at the time, where you can be like, oh my God, look at this. I'm actually in this firefight with these guys and learning tactics and learning what they're doing. And now we're getting to the point where we are not just watching it. We are getting taught what they're doing at the same time and getting a lot of information from it.
For sure. Yep. So,
no.
You got anything else?
No, I think we're about to hit the 2-hour mark.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, we're out at 151 right now.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I don't know much you guys edit and post, but
we keep it pretty raw. Yeah.
Yeah, you send it.
Yeah. But one of the things that we like to do is just kind of pitch it over to our guests, kind of give them a 30-second talking point to pass off some folksy wisdom to everybody out there. If there's one thing that you wanted to convey to somebody, what would it be?
I mean, your cliche of go out and train. Go out and be a positive member of your community, whether that's be picking up trash that you walk by on the sidewalk, whether that's be helping out your neighbor who is elderly, whether that's, arranging, a neighborhood watch, and you guys can start training on comms and getting better at becoming prepared citizens. Get out there and build your community, be an asset to society, be a steward to your fellow man, and try to put more good into the world than you do bad.
Yeah,
that would be my talking point. Oh, and take classes from me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's what I was getting ready to go.
So where can everyone find you at?
All right, you can find me at Lindsay LYNDSEY. Don't on Instagram. I have a link tree with all of my pertinent links in there. You can sign up for classes. You can schedule one-on-ones if you'd like to do some private consults with me. I've got my email, all my contact information there. I am just a DM away. I am very accessible. and I would love it if you guys would come out and take one of the classes that I am teaching with Orion Training Group. I think post the release of this podcast, I think the next one I have coming up is in December, which is my last intro to comms class. Though with election season craziness, if I have enough people ask for it, I may do an emergency intro prior to that. But I don't know.
Emergency intro with smoke signals.
Yeah.
So. All right, Jefe, what do you got?
I guess I already dropped it earlier. Carry a gun, carry an ego, but don't carry both.
Yeah, that's good.
That's because I'm running out of sage wisdom. We're at how many episodes are we at right now? Like 20?
This will be 23.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Mine is oh man, I had one and I forgot it. Well, when your significant other comes home, regardless if that's your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, whatever the case may be. What's that?
Or your stepsister?
Stepsister, yeah. In some cases, drop whatever you're doing and go greet her. If you're coming home, drop whatever you're doing and don't say hi to the dogs. Go greet your significant other first and make sure that they know that you're the most important thing to them. So,
sounds like someone got in trouble today.
No, not at all. Just one of those things that I picked up in a marriage enrichment class a long time ago.
Nice. Good.
It wasn't really applied to either one of my past marriages.
I would say you're about 0 for 2 right now. So
yeah.
All right, well, Lindsay, hey, thank you so much. I know you said you're an old soul, so sorry for keeping up so late, but we really do appreciate you coming on for us. We will have all of your contact information into the description all
of this. All of it in the description of this podcast. So if you guys are interested in taking a class, I highly suggest you guys look into communications because just like Lindsay said, when things go sideways and you can't communicate, then you're going to realize, oh, I should have probably brushed up on that. But Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really do appreciate it. Jefe, appreciate you. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thanks
Lindsay,
for not bullying me too much.
We have to
I do.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Jefe. I appreciate y'all so much for having me on. Anytime you want to have me back on, I'm more than happy to get on here and talk shit about how old and short Mark is. Jefe, I need to figure out what your character flaw is so I can talk shit on you equally.
I'm left-handed. That's really.
Okay.
I married my stepsister.
Yep, there it is. Yep.
Got it.
Yep. So, thanks, guys. We really appreciate you guys swinging by and checking things out. And don't forget to live, laugh, and LARP. Bye, y'all.